Hello and welcome back to Pandemic Playground with Dave. Today we have another one of those context videos for this Surviving Europa, explain what's going on so far with the builds. Alright, so a lot has happened in the last context video that we had. And number one would be this guy here, or this thing here. This was my original kind of like turbine power generating site here, and it looked fairly ugly at one point. Probably still does, but I decided to remove a lot of the turbines from the sides to make this kind of like linked turbines to make it rotate and look a little bit better. And then I added the oxygen farms with the solar panels so we can gather that at the same time. Of course, things are a little too close, and of course it still kind of blocks some of the sun, but for the most part this works out well, and we get some power from the turbines, we get some power from the solar or the sun, we get some oxygen from the sun as well, and a little bit of nifty effect right there is going to be our exhaust system with some sparks. So this, for some reason, if you go a little too far back right there, you can see like the sparks going crazy on the turbines from afar, and it's a lot longer than it is when you get close to it. So unfortunately, a lot of that you cannot see in the time-lapse videos because my time-lapse machine is not as strong or as great as my main machine. So that's why some of the graphical effects don't show up, especially like these flame exhaust and things like that too. So those things don't show up on here as well. So that was number one. That's what we had done. We redesigned it a bit to look a little better. We used a lot of the beams kind of look here, and some piping for the oxygen and everything like that to go through the base. Another fun piece was this slide. The slide for the ores. So the slide for the ores worked out pretty well for the most part. And when I converted to these small little ejectors, that worked really well. Unfortunately, when I put 6 total ejectors, it spits out way too much ore at the same time, and it just eventually disappears because of the limits of how many ores can be in the world. So I decided to go with just 2 ejectors, and that worked out really well. It would actually slide down all the way to the finish line, which is this collector here, and honestly 4 ejectors worked out pretty well too, but just to be on the safe side I just left it with 2 instead. And this thing's just to connect a small connector connected to a large connector with the small but somewhat large conveyor junction or conveyor box there with the smaller ones and the injectors. That worked out pretty well, and it gives it a nice little graphical effect while the ores are sliding down into here. But unfortunately, again, the time-lapse machine doesn't show this flaming piece to it for the refineries, which makes it look a little bit better, especially at night, which for some reason on the time-lapse looks like it's always super dark up in this world. And of course, other than that, another thing we built was this oxygen farm. As you see here, or not farm, but oxygen, kind of an oxygen farm. It's just a whole bunch of oxygen tanks here, as you see, and this is so we can gather with the oxygen farm, and also some ice, like the O2H2 generators here, to get all the oxygen. Do we need all this oxygen? No, I don't think so. It's just for a nice little graphical look or visual effect for the most part. And again, I use some effects using exhaust to do some smoke. Not sure how that kind of relates, but I was just playing around with it and see how that kind of looks and it's not too bad. I think the other things I've done we've already seen or easy to explain. Things like this was the assembler here. There's actually 4 different assemblers with all the speed mods kind of built like this, which actually looks more like a generator or power source, but this actually is super fast in building a lot of production that we need, which is awesome. And of course, one of the biggest things we've done in the last few is actually this whole garage system. So first things first, this whole ramp system, I built it with the hinge and armor plates. One of the reasons why I did this ramp is because this thing became pretty well lifted off the ground. So I decided to, instead of just using the kind of like the, what's it called, these light armor slope tips and light armor slope 2x1x1 kind of system, which will give it a decent ramp but not the greatest kind of slope. The angle might be a little too sharp. So I built this, and I've done this before in the Surviving Pertem series for the bridge. So I decided why not just build it off of here too, so it could be easier to climb up into a garage system. So unfortunately, the ground is not as flat as I thought it was here. So I kind of had to build it out like this, where it's a little jagged, so that it can hit the ground a little bit more flatter, so a vehicle can actually climb up this. Otherwise, if you put a whole big slab here, a good decent portion on this side, it's gonna be stuck up from the ground, and a vehicle would not be able to climb up this thing. So that was kind of the issue. It looks terrible, but it's functional. So here, instead of having this side being lifted so high up, you can easily just cross through it like that. It's a small little bit of a bump, but it works. So this thing's not going anywhere. It's like it's not gonna go up to close and everything like that. So it's not too bad. It does look terrible though, for sure. And of course the door system. And Don actually has done this garage type system before in his Mars research and development series, which kind of stopped anyways, but I wanted to rebuild it, and with the armor blocks or armor plates, it made it look even cooler because we can separate them, and when it's closed it looks like it's flushed, completely flat and flushed, but they actually aren't. As you're gonna see when I open it, it opens out into there are different sections here, as you see here, which that I thought added a really cool effect for this type of door system. And unfortunately, the whole door system does take out like a good 3 blocks height. So it did reduce the garage's kind of height here a bit. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 4.5 height in the garage, which is not too bad. It fits most vehicles. I'm surprised it actually fit this vehicle, but it does, which is good. So we are on a pretty good height here. We do definitely need to decorate a lot more here, and also put some piping for connectors to connect to this mining rig, to that rover and everything like that, just to, you know, drop the resources to recharge the machines. So the original height that I was thinking of making was actually all the way up to here, but that whole garage system, or the door system, really did take a lot of space. So if I were to kind of just go through it inside here, you're gonna see pretty much the system, the door system right here. It does take up a lot of space because it takes these wheels, up the bottom wheels, top wheels, the whole door itself, and then the pistons on the sides. Actually, I didn't have to break that piece in the back. I could have just did it from the front, but that whole door system really made the garage a lot smaller, a lot lower. But again, it was functional, works out pretty well. This took a bit of time to kind of figure out as I went. Without the wheels, it just made the door not really close really well, so that was another thing. And then I had to figure out the lighting and everything like that as well, just to make it a little bit more brighter inside. Put this kind of runway lights here, but that's going to prevent me from building stuff. And if you're curious and don't know how this kind of works, if this place is airtight, it definitely is not airtight. I could make it airtight. I could use some hanger doors on the bottom piece and top piece, since it's so short in the front here. So I could do that to make it airtight if I wanted to. I do need to close out these pipes if that's the case, and I do have these doors as well, so I can get to the back. So we could airtight this garage system if we really wanted to. I don't think I'm going to, because it's just a garage. not like you're gonna live here, so I don't need the oxygen and things like that. So definitely a fun build of this series was this whole garage system based off those wheels, and I just love the design of the armor plates that this thing does kind of show. And it is all linked from like hinges, blocks, blast door blocks, as you see here, just to get that design out of it. And it worked out really well. I was kind of surprised. I thought it's going to take a lot longer to kind of figure this all out, and it may cause some clang, but it didn't. So that was perfect. And then the last thing I did here was the landing pad. The landing pad, originally, I wanted to take the original one that we had here, as you see it's gone, and move it up there and expand it. So I can keep the materials, keep the same design, but extend it a little bit. But unfortunately, the ship that I had, the ship that I used to carry the miner for the most part, the one with I think 4 or 6 large hydrogen tanks on the thing, that whole thing's been dismantled. But the biggest problem I had is that I connected the landing pad with that ship without knowing that the magnetic plate was locked onto the connector at the same time as me locking onto the connector. So when I the initial thing when I did that, you didn't really see it in time lapse because it happened so quick. The whole thing started to spin out like crazy, and it did break a small portion of the garage right around here, I believe, on down here. So it chipped it a little bit. So what I decided to do was just launch it up into space and just forget about it. And then eventually brought the ship back down, and I just kind of dismantled it with my grinders and things like that. So some of that's still here because it's a little hard to grind down with that chip. But yeah, that's my kind of the biggest experience I had with Clang so far. And luckily, I was able to fly up to prevent it from destroying the whole entire base. And yeah, so I guess there's some kind of experimenting there to look at Clang drive when it comes to a connector and a landing gear. Well, not landing gear, but magnetic plate being connected at the same time. So it did spin out in a circular motion, but I was able to fly it up. So that kind of made it safe. And if you don't really believe me, I could cycle through some of the parts here. So if you look at the different grids, we should be able to find it somewhere. Right there. So let me just teleport here. So it is actually still flying away, it looks like. Alright, so as you can see, it's right here in space, and it is actually floating away from the original spot, and it still has motion because I just let it go. So this thing is just flying away, and I'm just gonna leave it as that. I could probably just remove it or get rid of it if anything, but I'm just gonna leave it. But yeah, this thing is floating in space. So yeah, so with the landing pad gone, I kind of just rebuilt this whole thing. The unfortunate piece is that it does take a lot of materials for making these graded catwalks, which I don't really have too much just yet. As you see, some of it was built out, some of it wasn't built out, but we'll just leave that as that for now. But this ship has been really helpful. Kind of the Swiss Army knife kind of ship that has a welder and a grinder to really help out in building a lot of stuff. More so the welder piece, less the grinder. But I think in the future I'm gonna make some kind of projector garage piece area so I can print more of this guy and also this drone system. Hopefully I can fix that. So we can build more of similar ships and maybe a drill system. Or a drilling ship or mining ship instead of using this whole modular miner, because I've kind of broke it several times, or at least the cargo containers I've broken a few times, as you see here. It's not sufficient enough to use something like this, but it has helped with gathering a lot of resources. What I really probably need to do is create individual large grid ships with this cargo container to latch onto this kind of mining stand or whatever it's called. That would be a lot easier and a lot more efficient than using a ship to carry this box over back to the base to drop the resources. So I might eventually do that, or just create a whole new mining ship which would operate pretty much the same way as that, but gather specific ore down in these pits here. So for example, like getting iron, all I really need to do is get a mining ship to go straight down this way, not down this way vertically like this mining thing does. The only good part of having a mining system like this, it does gather the ice so that we can use for hydrogen, so we can use for oxygen and so forth. But it does gather the iron, the nickel, and everything else rather slowly. So I think I do need a mining ship so that it can go horizontal to grab a lot of these things. And it should grab a lot more and a lot faster than using a machine like this. This thing just looks pretty, it looks interesting to me. That kind of almost looks like some kind of mech kind of thing where it has legs and arms and things like that. But yeah, it's just not too efficient in that sense. But it worked out pretty well. So there's a lot more to do here. One, I'm still getting rid of and slowly getting rid of things here. In the beginning, the first little platform that we built here. So I'm probably going to build kind of like a little home here for, or a hab station here for myself. That's gonna house the medical room, maybe a cryo chamber. I still gotta attach this battery. Kind of like a control room, hab room with a bed and things like that. So I do have to put that there. I still have to remove some more stuff. I think I'm gonna get rid of this grinding pit because I haven't really used it anymore. This was for the unknown signals, which I haven't really collected too many of them anymore. So we don't need that. This control tower can leave, or we can kind of make it taller, whatever the case is. But I do need to close out this whole entire base a little bit more. So what I mean by that is kind of like a fort style, put a giant wall around this whole entire area, and I just killed myself. So what I was gonna plan to do is put a lot of kind of a wall system, a fort kind of like thing. So I'm gonna surround our base with it, with a wall, and then on each corner or so, I'm gonna add a large or tall kind of watchtower with some turrets and everything like that. So I have seen a lot of these things kind of roaming around, which about 6 to 9 kilometers away. Maybe I could build something tall enough to maybe even target these things and shoot it down. Maybe. I think that's a pretty hard task, or a tall task, pun intended, in that sense. So I might not do that, but you can always try. Or maybe build a ship and just try to shoot one down. That would be awesome. And that's going to be a lot of parts too. Then I think we're going to need a big grinding pit in that sense too. But yeah, I do need to gather a whole bunch more material just to do that, because I am running low on like iron to make steel plates, because this thing took a whole bunch of materials, this whole garage system. So yeah, I think the next thing really, again, hab station, the whole wall system is up next. Maybe a grinding pit, maybe a drilling or mining ship. So lots more to come in the future, I would think. And yeah, I think I'm just trying to make some random builds or crazy builds here and there, or kind of like experimental builds, see if it works. More so than just creating a base. But of course, if you want to see something, feel free to leave a comment down below, and maybe I'll try and build it. Alright, so if you guys are enjoying the series, I'll continue to make a lot more of these for you guys to enjoy. So of course, hit that like button, thumbs up that video, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye.